Hi, this is Tonia Becker, and I'm your host for today's episode of PartsVu Xchange Talks Boating. If you haven't already, please subscribe to PartsVu's YouTube channel. And if you want to make sure that you don't miss any of our podcast episodes, subscribe to PartsVu Xchange Talks Boating wherever you get your podcasts: Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or Amazon Music. I wasn't sure what was going to happen when I sat down with Captain Kevin Lanier, but I knew it was going to be fun. Captain Kevin discovered his passion for deep-sea fishing as a young boy. He served his country in the U.S. Navy, then as an FAA air traffic controller for 30 years. After 30 years of withstanding the stress of being an air traffic controller, he decided to live his true passion and started KC Sport Fishing. The company operates out of Port St. Joe in Mexico Beach, Florida, and conducts fishing charters, cruises, including sunset cruises, and captain's services. Captain Kevin holds a Master 50-ton captain's license from the U.S. Coast Guard. He's an experienced charter captain with many hours on the water and is certified to operate towing vessels. He has experience relocating boats and is a fishing instructor. Finally, he's a pro staff member for leading tackle and marine electronics companies. A lot of times I like to have a more established theme for our episodes, but in talking with Captain Kevin to prepare for our episode, I decided that more than anything, I just wanted to ask him random questions and see where we go. Thanks so much for being here today, Captain Kevin.
Hey, it's great. I really appreciate the invite to join you.
Absolutely. So from what I understand, you fell in love with fishing at an early age, and it feels like your life journey has been making your way back to doing what you love to do for a living and finally launching KC Sport Fishing.
Oh, absolutely.
How did you decide to go this route, become a professional captain and launch your company?
Well, for 30 years, I was an air traffic controller, and my way to relax was to saltwater fish. And I spent most of my career in close proximity to the saltwater. And on my days off, I would go out and fish. And it expanded from there. It actually started as a Facebook page. 11 years ago, we started KC Sport Fishing's Facebook page so I could share our adventures with our friends. And I lived in the Pacific Northwest at the time, and my family and a lot of my friends lived back on the East Coast. So it was a way of sharing what was going on in our lives at the time.
Good. Awesome. You know, our listeners obviously love boats and like to hear about stats about your boats and engines and that kind of thing. Just out of curiosity, what boats and engines does KC Sport Fishing run?
Well, right now we have two boats. We have a 2020 32-foot World Cat built in Tarboro, North Carolina. It's got twin 300 horsepower Yamahas, and we cruise along at about 30 miles an hour, and at that speed we're getting about 1.25 miles to the gallon, which for a big boat, that's pretty good. It tops out at 48 miles an hour. Cats are definitely different than your monohulls. I can never win a race, but you will still have your cup of coffee in your hand when we get where we're going.
They're very stable. The hulls are designed so that they're quite stable. Is that?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. I can run the same speed in a 4-foot sea as I can in flat water.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. This is a little, speaking of being off topic, how are they designed to allow that to happen?
They have like a semi-planing hull, but the fact that the boat only drafts 18 inches, we ride up on top a lot. So sometimes when I'm trying to get going, it's really rough, and I tell everybody just hang on, and once I get up on top, we just scoot right along.
Oh, that's so cool. You know, I know that you have hours and hours worth of stories, and I have a feeling that we're going to be doing more episodes together. But for this episode, I just wanted to rapid fire a little bit, just random fun questions that I think our listeners will enjoy. So you game for that?
Yeah, I will warn you that, like I said, I was a controller for 30 years, so we're kind of accustomed to that. So let's see how it pans out here.
So first question. What's the number one question your clients will ask you when you're out there?
Do I have a bathroom?
That's an important piece of information.
Yeah, what's really funny is to watch the ladies on the boat, and somebody will look at me and go, do you have a bathroom? And I go, yes. And just the sense of relief that comes out on their faces is actually funny. I would say the second one would be, am I going to get seasick? And I always tell people that's really up to you at this point. I tell them if you haven't already taken your medication, it's too late as we're leaving the dock. And I can always tell by looking at someone when they're starting to turn south, as I call it.
Yeah, I've been there. That's not so fun, really.
Well, the lips give you away. The lips lose their color. So that's how I know. And I very courteously hand them a bucket.
And make way for the side, if you can.
Yep. I say, remember that bathroom we talked about? That is not to get sick in.
So a bit of a controversial topic, battle of the sexes time. Are men or women better anglers?
Oh, there is no doubt, and there is no controversy in my mind. A woman will outfish a man every time. Anywhere from teenage girls up through adult women, they will outfish the men every time, and I will call it before the trip starts. And it depends on how fast the guy realizes what they're doing different. If they realize it early enough, they wind up starting to catch fish as well.
Do you think it's just, men, women, I think, maybe listen more. Maybe they're not as experienced as some of the men are, and they just listen to exactly what the captain is telling them to do. Is that the trick, you think? Oh,
no doubt. No doubt they listen, they pay attention. They have no really preconceived notions about what's, I'm not saying they don't know how to fish, but when we're talking about how to do things differently, they will listen to what we say, and they don't get over anxious when a fish bites, which down here we have to use special hooks, and that is critical. When people, and especially guys, get on the boat and say, "Oh, I bass fished my whole life," I say, well, it's going to be a long day.
And you're probably not going to catch much, pal, unless...
Well, I did have a gentleman one time that he kept missing fish, and I just walked up, put my hand on his shoulder, and leaned over and whispered in his ear. I said, if you set the hook one more time, I'm going to throw you out of the boat. He said, I got you, Captain, and he caught fish the rest of the day.
It's funny. I mean, I think that a lot of people, especially guys, will sometimes write these things off as beginner's luck, but it's just listening. It's not,
No. When a guy gets on the boat and starts giving me his resume, I just wait and see.
Well, if I ever get to go out with you, I will. I'll definitely listen intently. And
well, I appreciate that. I mean,
hopefully outfish everyone.
Right. We're not going to lead you astray. There's just certain techniques. And I always tell people every day before we leave the dock, the quicker you pick it up, the more fish you will catch.
That's right. That's right. So on any given day, how do you decide, when you take people out on your charters and so forth, how do you decide where you're going to go on any given trip?
Well, I'd love to give you this scientific in-depth answer of how I make my choice, but most days I make that decision when I'm lying in the bed, when I'm waking up in the morning, and what does my gut tell me? A lot of years fishing the way we have, I have learned to trust that. And there are a lot of days that I am heading out the pass and I change my mind. So, I talked to a few captains, we work together, but it comes basically down to my gut feeling of how I think the day's going to go. Now, some days that's right, some days that's not, but I've also learned one of my things as being an air traffic controller is you come up with a plan. If it doesn't work, you come up with another plan. And I have learned to be flexible on the water, but I've also learned to trust my gut.
And that gut is based on years of experience. It's not just,
Oh, yeah.
A feeling in the moment, I'm sure. Even though it kind of,
Well, you get trends. You get things that go on. I've learned we don't go to the same spot 2 consecutive days because if one spot produced, it will not produce tomorrow. It always happens that way. And, I do have some of the apps that you look at for current and things like that. But in our area, it's, I just come out each day and I look at the weather, I look at the wind, waves. And there's some days that I come out and we're going to go west and the waves are just beating us to death. And I turn and go a different direction. So we are flexible. We've got plenty of spots to fish.
Why do you think that a spot that produces one day doesn't necessarily produce the next?
Well, I'm a firm believer that when you go to a spot to fish it, your most aggressive fish will bite first. Mm-hmm. I always tell my customers, when you put that bait down off the bat, you want to be ready because that fish will bite. And sometimes we'll get 1, 2, 5 fish off a spot and the bite will stop. And so I think some of it has to do with pressure. I think some of that has to do with the weather, current. But I've never gone back to a spot the following day and done as well as I did the day before.
Yeah. Yeah.
Plus, we don't want to fish out spots as well.
Yeah. No, that makes complete sense.
Yeah.
So now a little bit of juicy information. What has been the most interesting or unusual request that you've gotten as a captain?
Well, I can't discuss them all on this program.
This is a family-friendly affair, Kevin.
Family-friendly affair on a boat. We do have the Vegas theme. What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. But usually most requests come down to either memorializing someone that's passed. We have fished for a day and then spread ashes while we're out there. A lot of times people will want to see things. So they give me a list of these are the things we would like to see while we're out. And, as you know, Mother Nature is her own thing. And some days things are there and some days they're not. But nothing really out of the ordinary because we are somewhat limited to what we can do. I have people ask me if they can ski behind the boat. I have had people ask me.
Ski behind?
Yeah, ski behind the boat.
Okay.
So
maybe not.
Yeah, not today. I have had people, we're 50 miles offshore. It feels like it's 900 degrees. They asked me if they can jump in. And I have let them do that before, all the rods, all the bait and everything out of the water. We jump in, swim around, and get back on the boat. But like we had discussed offline a little bit today, there's a pretty big great white hanging around our area right now. So we might want to rethink that as we go along.
Yes, I would think absolutely.
Yes.
I thought, I thought until not so long ago, actually, speaking of requests that people might ask for on a boat, I thought until fairly recently a boat captain could legally marry somebody, but that is in fact not the case. That's just a myth or I don't know. I don't even know where that came from.
No, that's true. That's true. I had a friend years ago that their daughter wanted me to marry them. She wanted to be married by a captain. And it is a myth. A marriage performed by a captain is only good as long as the cruise. However, if a captain is otherwise certified to conduct civil ceremonies, then we can marry them. And I have, in fact, performed 4 ceremonies myself over the years of helping people start their lives together.
Yes. That's great. You can, the internet facilitates that licensure pretty quickly, I think, these days.
Oh, absolutely. A civil ceremony is a civil ceremony. It doesn't matter who does it. So as long as we're licensed, and I've got more license than you can shake a stick at. So I got that.
So what is the most interesting thing that you've seen when you've been out there in the water?
Well, that's an easy answer. I started my career in the Pacific Northwest as a charter boat captain, and we spent a lot of time in the water. And if you've ever heard the term bubble feeding, it's something that humpback and gray whales do. We had the privilege of getting to watch that 20 feet off the side of our boat as those humpback whales came up and out of the water with their mouths open. And Yeah, and that was probably the most impressive thing I have ever seen on the water. The great thing about the Pacific Northwest is, it is a travel corridor for those whales going from California up to Alaska. So we got to see a lot of that, and it's just an amazing thing when you look at nature and how it conducts itself. We were running in one day while the whales were in the area, and buddy boats were following me, and I was out in front, and a whale breached, came completely out of the water in front of our boat, like a very comfortable distance away from us, and big splash in the water, and all the guys behind me are screaming at me on the radio, asking me, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" Because from their perspective, the thing hit us. So, but that's the most interesting thing that I've ever seen on the water. Here in Florida, we get to see a lot of turtles, things like that. It's pretty neat, especially in the springtime when they're mating. We're cruising around. You'll see them popped up all over the place. So a lot of cool things. But I always tell people when we're riding along, all the cool things are outside of the boat. So you got to keep watching. Flying fish. I mean, how many people... they look and say, wow, I thought they were a myth, but flying fish all the time. And I know it's going to be a good day when we see flying fish.
I've seen those. I've seen flying fish out there. It's very cool. Explain bubble feeding for folks that may not know what that is.
Well, the wonderful thing about National Geographic, you can go on there, you can Google it on YouTube. But what happens is the whales swim in a circle, and they let air out, and they make a circle of bubbles. It's like a column. And the bait fish are frightened, and they gather together in a ball, and these whales come up through that column with their mouths open and just eat tons of anchovies and herring. They're, again, smart. They've learned this from their parents, and, so... Google it. I mean, YouTube it. And it's really cool to watch. No, I'm definitely going to do that. That's and I was heartened to hear recently the humpback whale population has rebounded. So, they were nearly extinct, in the 70s, 80s. So that's awesome. Well, go out if you ever travel to Washington or Oregon and go out in the springtime, you can actually see them migrating from the beach, especially with a good pair of binoculars. Great. So another kind of just a question that we're turning a little bit, what should people know about the etiquette of chartering? Well, when you go on a charter, the best thing to do is ask questions ahead of time. I always tell people, read reviews, word of mouth of where you're going. I see a lot of times people ask on Facebook, hey, I'm coming to the area, who should I go with? Well, you'll get 50 recommendations, and you'll be able to see everybody's recommending their buddies. It's not necessarily the best person to go with, but go with my buddy. So my recommendation is, do your research. I actually, on my podcast, I did a whole episode on how to choose a charter, pick the right one. So, but etiquette wise, read what they send you about what to bring, what not to bring. No glass on a boat. I have people wear shoes. I've seen fins through feet. I've seen hooks in feet. So I would rather people keep their shoes on. Sunscreen. There's this great new thing on the market is spray sunscreen. It is the absolute worst thing in the world for a boat. It stains cushions. It just stains fiberglass. And guys like me really hate it. And this time of year, I see a lot of it because we're cleaning and we're doing maintenance on the boat. Another thing is for you lovely ladies who love to get tanned before you come to the beach. Don't put bronzing cream on or stuff like that because it gets on everything. So, etiquette-wise, those are the easy things. Other things there, make sure that you're prepared to pay, however you've discussed it with the owner or the captain. Tip your crew. The number one way to never get allowed back on my boat is to not tip my deckhands, because they work their tails off for you every trip from the minute we leave the dock till hours after we get back. So those kind of things are imperative as far as being remembered as a good customer. Don't complain. I mean, fishing is fishing. I had somebody ask me one time, well, how can I fill up my cooler? I said, go to the fish shop and buy them. Because I told him, I said, I don't care how good of a fishing trip we have. If we don't fulfill what you want, you won't be happy. So fish markets are fantastic. I had a fellow captain tell me one time that his boss years ago said, we as charter captains equate a successful trip with a full box of fish, when in reality it's the smiles and the laughs of the people that are getting off the boat. So those are things to remember. And one other thing, I don't want to forget this, medical information. If you get on the boat and you have a medical issue, tell the captain. And we've experienced them all. And a couple of times, if I would have known about the medical issue ahead of time, it would have made things a lot easier on all of us, and we wouldn't have gotten, it wouldn't have gotten stressful at the time.
That's a very good point. Excellent point. Now, those are all really good tips. And the spray sunscreen tip, I think, I've gotten that on my car, stepping outside of my car in spraying before you go to walk off, whatever. It does not easily come off. I can tell you that.
No, and just imagine if you're doing it having it done on your boat every day. So I always invite people to step off the boat if they're going to put on spray sunscreen. So
yeah, that's a very good idea. So I'd like to close with, what's the craziest boating or fishing superstition you've ever heard?
It's the banana story.
What's that?
I mean, it's, everybody hears when you go fishing or on a boat, do not take bananas. The best way to describe why the banana thing is a folk legend among mariners is, many years ago, decades ago, they used to transport bananas by wooden boat. And the bananas over time would rot in the hull of the boat. And it would rot the wood. So banana boats were normally the ricketiest old boats in the fleet, and they would sink. So that's why most people will tell you, do not take a banana on a boat. Now, me, it's really up to you. If we don't catch fish, I am going to blame your banana. I guarantee you that right off the bat. So, and everybody says, well, even wearing Fruit of the Loom underwear is like having a banana on the boat, since one of the characters is a banana. So that's probably the longest standing, most consistent myth about, story about boating and things like that, that has gone on through history.
That is amazing and really funny.
Oh, yeah.
Well, thanks so much for being here today, Kevin. This was really fun.
Well, I had a great time. I mean, one of the things that I do probably more than anything else is tell stories. And especially if you get me on a roll, I can tell stories so you don't want to hear any more. Just experiences over life. I'm 58 years old. And if you pay attention to life, you'll have plenty of stories to tell.
That is the best life lived. That is for sure.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the PartsVu Xchange Talks Boating podcast. Are you in a dock war with your boating neighbor for the cleanest boat? Check out our marine soaps, polishes, waxes, and more at PartsVu.com. And for free shipping, use the coupon code PVTalksShine, a special perk for our podcast listeners. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram for boating knowledge, to keep in touch with the PartsVu community, and for special sales and promotions. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review this podcast, and check out the show notes for the coupon code just mentioned More information about PartsVu and the products we offer, as well as our boating blog, the PartsVu Xchange. And a big thanks to Mind for performing the original music featured within this podcast.